Welcome back. The next topic that we will talk about is Cascading Scrum, a story of communication at eye level. The first time I met one of the speakers on this session was in Belgrade on Agile Serbia Conference 2019. She amazed me and everybody else there with her incredible and creative drawings, her knowledge to transfer the key elements and purpose of Agile to paper and share that with all of us. She is a head of Agile Transformation and head of Industrial Lines Project Management at her company. And her companion on this session is an Agile manager for years now and is helping teams to be more productive and deliver the best solution possible. He has been working on lead positions for a decade now and has great experience to share with us and with you. So please welcome Juliane Pilster and Heiko Schröder.
First of all, we are going to introduce ourselves. So my name is Juliane. I have a degree in electrical engineering and more than 10 years of experience in leadership positions at different companies and industries. Since the beginning of the year, I'm responsible for the Agile transformation at HDI Global SE, which is one of the leading industrial insurers. And I used to work with Heiko, who's going to introduce himself in a minute, from 2018 until 2020, I think. And so I will hand over to Heiko now to introduce himself.
Thank you, Juliane, and a warm welcome also from the Stuttgart area in southern Germany. As Juliane already mentioned, for the last 3.5 years, I am with technology leader Trumpf, working as an agile manager and helping to shape and advance large-scale R&D organizations that are founded on agile core principles. And much of this journey I did together with Juliane, so I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present some of our work here at this venue. Although it's only remote and it feels a little distant, and I'm really happy to be on real stages soon again.
I hope so too.
We started this on, we will present something on software and when we say large scale, we mean 100, 200 developers. And at the moment we are, what we are showing today is, has been rather successful, and we are now rolling it out to a larger, or to the complete development organization at Trumpf Machine Tools, meaning in the end to about 1,000 engineers. So we are talking about a very large scale organization and I'm very happy every day to help people and teams to thrive in what they are best at. As Ivan already mentioned, before joining Trumpf, I worked for a decade in the aerospace industry, serving in various leadership positions, and also getting first into contact with agile principles and ways of working. Interesting enough, not in the software industry, but in the hardware. So I started in hardware, tried it in software at large scale, and now I'm in hardware again. And the curiosity, I'm very curious by nature, and the curiosity that drives me towards trying to understand the inner workings of teams and social systems was probably the same that almost 2 decades ago drove me into science. So I'm trained as a physicist, and whenever I'm confronted with the question, hey, are you really satisfied being a manager? I can only say that complex systems, so people working together, are at least as complex as understanding matter at the nanoscale. So all these scientists don't know what they are missing.
So probably the curiosity on how organizations emerge and how they are currently struggling with what happens around them is what brought us together, Heiko, and we started to work on organizational development. And as you all know, probably it's nothing that we have to explain in this group. We are confronted with the VUCA world, which brings us volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And Heiko and myself, we developed a kind of model to show the steps that an organization usually has to take whenever it comes to VUCA world, and how to respond and how to adapt to changing environments. And we showed this to you on the next page. As I already said, we start with the VUCA world, the changing environment, which is something we have to just understand that it happens. It's something that we have to deal with. It's nothing that we can put away and say no, it's not for me. VUCA is probably for everyone, and that's why many, especially large companies and traditional companies, started to work agile, or what they think is agile, on a team level, which most of the times ended in something like Scrum or Kanban. And we cannot stop there. So we have to further develop, and we really have to cultivate self-organization and autonomy. And what we want to talk about today is the real cultural change and servant leadership and the true agile organization, because we believe these are the two top steps that an organization has to take whenever it wants to be sustainable in the future. When we are confronted by the VUCA world and we have to change something, then we have to replace our hierarchical structures. This is shown on the next page. Usually large old companies are coming from this kind of organizational structure, very hierarchical, bosses on every level, and the hierarchy is very highly developed in those companies. And what has to happen now is that we have to be more network thinkers. So we have to develop an organization that does not work in hierarchical way, but as a network. And the question is, how can we do this immediately without changing everything? Because as you can imagine, in big organizations, and we know this from Trumpf, where we work together, and I also know it from every other companies that I joined during the last 10 years, you cannot change everything from today until tomorrow. And that's why we have to think about how especially the leaders have or can change something. And actually, all the traditional companies start from this hierarchical state. And what we know from those companies is, or from those organizations, is that always the behavior follows the structure. So if we are in a very hierarchical system, we will behave like this. So that what often happens is that we delegate responsibility to our bosses, for example, or that we wait for them to decide something, and so on. And we would like to ask all the leaders to rethink their role in the organizations, because when you take this is it called cone pyramid? So this thing, if you take the top of it and pull it to you, then what happens is basically that you can see that all hierarchical organizations are also kind of network organizations, and that it depends on how you behave in this surrounding. And that's why we believe that leadership also can create a different culture. So everyone who is responsible in an organization can start changing something by not only following the hierarchical structure that is given by the organizational state, but by rethinking how they can act in an organization and to start working like network thinkers. But nevertheless, network thinking requires a different conception of human beings, Heiko.
Yeah, I mean, leadership creates culture, but culture is nothing that can just be defined. It's better to see culture as the shadow of the actions an organization actually takes. And this is where leadership and the example leadership sets comes into play. And to illustrate the challenges that leaders face when they want to rewire the culture of an organization and also their own thinking, and can be very nicely illustrated by a rather old paper or theory from Douglas McGregor that I now pull here out of the relic box, the theory X and theory Y, that probably many of you know very, very well, because it shows in a very catchy way what happens in an organization if I perceive human beings as inactive and in need of strong guidance. So Douglas McGregor shows in his paper what happens to people when I consider them as very inactive. So what happens if I, as a manager, see someone as inactive, spiritless, uninterested by nature? I conclude that this someone is in need of clear directions and rules with limited freedom of action. And this for sure makes people passive, adapted, and sticking to established behavior. And in the long run, he or she will wither in her skills, becomes helpless and driveless, which makes her appear even more inactive, more spiritless, and uninterested by nature. And what we need to do is change our attitude and mindset towards people to conceiving them as appearing curious and interested by nature, which can trigger a positive feedback loop. Because if I conceive someone as positive and curious, interested, then I can involve him in decisions. I can grant him or her with freedom of action, which makes the person become more proactive, show initiative, develop new skills, takes ownership, projects optimism, which in turn lets her appear even more curious and interested. And as I said, this theory is 50 plus years old, and I guess that in today's leadership tenure tracks, nobody considers himself or herself as sticking to this theory. But what makes this circle so devilish is that when I now want to change the way we work from a hierarchy to a network, then it doesn't matter how I in general conceive or perceive human beings if I think they are motivated by nature, because as a consequence of this feedback loop, what I see is they are spiritless, inactive, and uninterested. But this might be just a symptom of the systems working so far, because I didn't give them this freedom, and they will enter this negative feedback loop. And what management needs, or leadership, if we want to get into a network organization, needs to figure out is how to break these cycles and get into a positive cycle, because that doesn't happen. People do not learn proactive working and thinking in line with management's intention by themselves, without small steps in this direction. And to get into this feedback loop, and in particular to remain in this feedback loop, because organizations react when they are under pressure, they fall back to old established behavior. That requires a lot of time and effort and constant rediscovery. So that is also what we try to symbolize with this Rubik's Cube here, that we need to figure it out each and every day, how to continuously feed this positive feedback loop. And a very important message is, when we want to get into a network organization, is that leadership, I mean, we often project hierarchy with leadership, but leadership doesn't actually require hierarchy, but it happens wherever someone takes on responsibility. Juliane, are you there? There might be some technical difficulties, so I will just plow on. And there she is again. I was about to take over. You're muted.
Sorry, I dropped from the internet. So I take over now again?
Yes.
Okay. So if we were able to change our culture from traditional old hierarchy thinking to this kind of network thinking based on or relying on why human beings, as Heiko just explained, then we probably already made a big step. And as Heiko said, it's necessary to find a way to make this sustainable, because this is very weak as long as organizational structures come across these culture and this new kind of thinking. And that's why we think that it's definitely necessary to come to a point where the organizational structure itself changes. And this is something that we try to describe with building blocks that you can see on this slide. We believe that that the management structure will remain as long as we are talking about very big organizations, very large organizations. Because we don't think that that it will work in a traditional organization after this change without anything. And what happens when you start working with, for example, Scrum or other Agile frameworks, is that you change your coordination structure. So the work and how people work together, how teams work together changes from this hierarchical department view to this new network thinking. And the management structure obviously remains the old one. And as you can imagine, this clashes at some point. And as I said, that's why we think that it is necessary to change also the organization itself in order to become an adaptive organization. So as we already mentioned, Heiko and I, we worked together at Trumpf for a while, and that's why we brought with us the Trumpf case as a case study, which Heiko is going to present to you now.
Yeah. So how can you align coordination structure and management structure in a way that you have what we call minimum viable interference, so that you have a supportive structure and not a structure that gets in the way of the coordination of teams. We have our solution that I'm going to present here is, we call it Cascading Scrum. And Juliane and I wrote a paper on that, unfortunately in German language, but you can find it under the link that is here on the bottom right of the page. And just to give you an organizational context, we are talking about the software development department, or a software development department at Trumpf that exists, that we had until 2020, because now we are we have transferred that into the bigger development organization that also is built on agile principles. And it was part of the R&D at Trumpf Machine Tools, as I said, around about 1,000 engineers, of which 170 were the staff members in this software department, working together in more than 20 Scrum teams. We had a leadership team of 7 chief product owners responsible for product portfolios and 6 agile managers, of which Juliane and I were each one. And prior to establishing this cascading system, we had more than 10 years field experience with Scrum. So the Agile core process was well established, and what we tried to do with our organizational structure is to find an answer to this conflict of coordination structure and classical management structure, and to find a way to align this. So what did we do? It's 2 essential pillars. The coordination structure is our scaling framework to coordinate agile development teams. And the second pillar that needs to be in line with this coordination structure was a new leadership model with separate roles for functional and disciplinary authority. So, but let's get into the coordination structure. Our agile core process was Scrum, and as you all know, I mean, first paragraph of the Scrum guide, Scrum is a process that's easy to understand, but hard to master. But on team level, eventually you'll get there. It's a very robust framework to work, to practice, inspect, and adapt. And the difficulty comes in when you have to, we have very complex software systems, often also legacy systems, where sometimes even, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams work together into the same product backlog. And then you need a coordination between these teams and a structure in order to have the whole product team to be able to deliver. And we tried to implement a very lightweight coordination framework that enables teams to coordinate matters that they cannot self-solve on their own, and to also that is heavily dependent on networked empowerment. So we have teams, and whenever we need cross-coordination in a certain discipline or domain, like architecture, user experience, the product owner's quality, whatever, infrastructure, we encourage teams to build a chapter that takes ownership of this domain in order to coordinate the teams. And each and every chapter is represented by a chapter speaker to the outside world that elevates issues that the chapter cannot solve or that can lead to conflicts between the teams, because teams maybe not have the same opinion, and the sum of the speakers represent the technical authority, decision authority for the product, called the squad. So we have with this whole lineup a very slim setting, or a lean setting, that allows us to coordinate up to, I don't know, the biggest squad that we have was, I think it was 8 teams. And this can also cascade even higher. So we can have multiple teams that have a module squad, and then cascade again into a product, and then again into a portfolio. But we do not do this to go through the motions, but have always only encouraged instances or chapters to form where necessary. So in case we do not have modules, then we can directly cascade to product level. And if the one product represents the portfolio, we do not need to cascade into portfolio level. What is essential, this whole thing only works if the chapters take ownership for their domains, and the squad takes ownership for their product. And so we have this network structure that needs to be alive and functional. And in order to get there, we need between leadership or management in a classical organization, because Trumpf is a mid-sized corporation with very classical hierarchies. We need to establish eye-level communication that do not and beyond hierarchies. Eye-level communication, what do we mean by this? We mean communication on an equal footing, irrespective of hierarchies and positions. So if I go back to this slide, a chapter that represents the technical authority for this domain, like architecture, needs to be able to represent this domain on equal footing with management. And we cannot go through management levels and abstract the problem away from the team, because then we do not have empowerment. And this is only possible, this eye-level communication. So do I really say something or criticize my boss or higher management structures? I only dare to do so if I'm working in a trusting and secure environment. And often such eye-level communication is inhibited by the prevailing culture in strongly hierarchical organizations. So two hypotheses for shaping an environment that fosters eye-level communication. First of all, eye-level communication requires an open mindset and therefore a cultural change on all levels, which is a long-term effort. And as we said before, culture is the shadow of the actions an organization actually takes. And that is why classical hierarchies are crucial in establishing this mindset change. They need to walk their talk, otherwise it doesn't work. And such a change, Juliane mentioned before that leadership and management and hierarchies, they can do a lot to foster this change. But in the end, we strongly believe that this is more likely to succeed if the management structure adopts to the coordination structure and not vice versa. Because if we let the management structure live on, it will always be, to some extent, in conflict with the coordination structure and the in product development that we are trying to establish. And how do we do that? How do we establish a management structure that supports the coordination structure and not somehow limits it? Our approach in the software development at Trumpf was to establish a new leadership model with two different roles of leadership. First, the product leadership. We call these leaders the chief product owners. And on the other side, the disciplinary leadership. So leaders being responsible for the development of the people, taking care of the people, and also building a frame and environment in which this self-empowered organization or team coordination can thrive, the so-called agile manager. And as you can see here, it's just depicted that there's no direct correlation. So one product owner, one chief product owner has a certain portfolio, and the teams in this portfolio are all in the group of one agile manager. But it's a network organization that makes also movement of people according to product needs and reteaming, irrespective of my relationship to the person who helps me in my development. My agile manager makes it irrespective of this, and makes it in a way easier. The positive effects that we had this Eyelevel, as I mentioned before, in particular between development teams, between the developer and the product owner. We have a strong focus on strengths. A chief product owner can focus on products, on managing a strong portfolio, on directing or on helping his product owner team to grow into defining great products. And the agile manager, on the other hand, has less operational day-to-day business in product development and can more focus on as being on being a partner for personal growth. And as a whole system, once we've understood how we do this, because before we had everything focused in one leadership position, it was just the group leader, the team leader, and everything went to him and now or to her, and now we have this more network-like structure, and that also makes room for leadership to grow where ownership is taken. And that is very fundamental, because it lets openness and also feedback culture within the teams grow. Focusing again on eye-level communication and on the role of an agile manager in taking care of people, of teams. It's that is connected to a very fundamental shift in the responsibility of a line manager. So with focus on the agile manager now, it's the line manager is no longer the one that is responsible for evaluating and steering people. So before it was required of him or her that she knows what their people are exactly doing in a technical sense and be able to do performance evaluations. Now it's the role of a leadership position, such as an agile manager, to creating a framework that enables self-management and that allows everybody to receive appreciative feedback. And the basics for this is mutual trust. So we can only, if we want such a frame to grow, then we need to have this trust established on all levels, within the team, between teams, and also between different roles like product ownership, teams, and also with agile management. To get there, we need psychological safety and very importantly, an open culture, because it's easier to provide positive feedback, but it's on the same and we need to foster that, and we need to focus on strength, but we need to, as an organization, to also learn to share constructive feedback when we are not happy with how we work with people together, and that is something that requires really this open culture. What can leadership? I mean, we said before, leadership is not bound to hierarchies, but at the beginning, it's very strongly correlated to hierarchies. And what kind of impulses can leadership introduce into an organization to get on the path to this open culture? 3 examples we would like to share with you. First of all, build trust through transparent organizational development. So it's do not hide what you are aiming for, and on all levels. It's and this example, this screenshot that we share, or this picture that we shared here is we had a task that we identify KPIs that show us that our agile transformation project has positive effects. And instead of establishing a working group that just discusses the different KPIs that were conceivable, we did this in an open space effort and involved everybody who wanted to contribute, and took this as an opportunity to also discuss the less positive effects of this transformation, making it very transparent what is expected of us as an organization and what we need to do in order to be able to continue our path. A second example, retrospectives are at the core of the agile development process on team level, and we needed, as an organization, we needed to learn that we need to do these retrospectives also in a more systematic way on organizational level. So not only in the cascaded teams, but also as a whole department. and just reflect on the path, the journey that we've taken. You can see this here on illustrated on a flip chart where we had just the way ahead of us, and we tried to discuss in an open space with everybody who wanted to join what dangers we saw ahead of us, what we might have collected on our way that we should separate from again, and what we figured that is still in need, what we are still needing, and allowing not only the team but the whole organization to get into this agile feedback loop of inspection, adaptation, and transparency. And the last example, also a reason why we are not standing on stage, but in a remote session. We all had this experience in Corona times that it was difficult to work together on distance, and we everybody needed to get into the socializing again. And one impulse that we set in our department that is, by the way, still ongoing. So we still have this coffee break that Juliane established, I don't know, 1.5 years ago. And where we help teams, not only, teams work together every day, but what is about people that just meet on the floor between team areas. And we created a platform by establishing just a daily coffee break with a virtual background challenge where everybody could join, and where people from different teams and departments and products just join every day, just share a coffee. Not everybody every day, but at the moment it's 5 to 15 people that do this every day, and create a common space and allows for socializing in times of physical distancing. And with this last example of possible impulses, I hand over to Juliane again.
Thank you, Heiko. So what we try to show you is that that we changed management structure to achieve eye-level communication, and also to change the mindset of the leaders to become leaders, not stay as managers, but become leaders, and to really support continuous improvement cycles, to really be a role model for transparency, inspection, adaptation, to be just part of the team and not standing in front, behind, above, wherever of the teams, but really be part of this network organization that we had established by changing the working mode before. So what we achieved is that also the management structure became this kind of network organization, and it's obvious now that organization which has a coordination structure as a network, as well as the management structure as a network, this will work out well, because we were able to minimize all the clashes between coordination and management structures. This helped Trump to make a big step, to really take the cultural foundation and go a next step towards the adaptive organization. And probably this is also, or has been, the basis, and is also the reason why Trump is nowadays doing this not only within the software department, but also in the much bigger hardware development. What we also think is that if you start a transformation like this, so if you start to transform the organization from traditional hierarchy 1 to a network organization, or wherever you want to go, it's necessary to prove or to make sure that you are on the right way. So whatever you do, we think you should check if you are on track, and if you are successful with whatever you're doing, so successful with all the changes. And that's why after, I think, 2 years, we have had a deep study on the satisfaction of our people within this 200 people department. And we received very positive feedback, especially for the new leadership model when we started to establish this. So when we started to split leadership to the chief product owner who is responsible for the product, and the disciplinary leader, which is called Agile Manager. Some of the, or many people said, why do I need two leaders? Why do I need this only disciplinary one? Because in the past, leaders tend to focus on the product and the result of the departments, because this was the reason to be successful for them, or this was the thing that was measured by their bosses. And what we think is that in an agile organization, or also in a network organization, you really have to improve not only your processes, but you really have to develop the people. And that's why the agile management role became very important to the people, because it was about their own development. And this is what we saw also in the study, that the people wanted, more than 80% wanted to stay or to stick to the two separate leadership roles, and also 80% were of the opinion that the agile transformation was successful. So obviously, the story of scaling Scrum is definitely not an easy path. So whenever you are in a big organization, it's not like this, actually. It's more like a difficult path like this. And you will go to different areas, and some will be great, some will be bad, and you just have to go through it. And we think that it's still worth to go this way, as long as you stick to the agile principles. And our key findings from this time is, or still are, that it's necessary to have a clear transition strategy. So make sure that the people know where you are and where you want to go. And don't forget that usually the leadership team is longer thinking about the transition, and the people start thinking about it much later. So don't forget that you are ahead of them. We think that the leadership team has to be a role model for the mindset shift that comes along with the change from traditional hierarchy to network organization, and of course provide stability through this change. Thank you very much. That's it from us. And if you want to get in contact with us, we would be very happy about this. And we posted our LinkedIn address there. So if you want to get in contact with us, feel free. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for your lovely session. Let's see if we have some questions. There is a question for you, so we can answer that, right? We can do it like this. Are you ready for the question?
Yes.
Yeah,
of course.
Cool.
Okay.
Maybe Heiko, you can stop screen sharing.
Yes,
so.
I will.
Yeah, it's okay like this. Yeah. Okay, so we have two questions. First question is, what was the hardest thing when you start implementing VOCA? How did you manage it? Who were main drivers for your transformation? Who wants to go?
So we can say that the main driver was the leader of the department. So I believe if he would not have been there, the journey would not have been started. So you probably always need someone who initiates the change and who really strongly believes in the change and can transmit this message to everyone.
And it's just to expand on that, I really think it's fundamental. And because the question was also what was the hardest thing? I mean, you need a lot of stamina to get through there, and the appreciation for the new roles that were being established. We needed to learn together to appreciate the other roles. And for example, to understand the role, we had Scrum Masters in our organization, and we are a very product-centered organization. And process people and people had a difficult time finding their role. And also this when you make when you have a classical hierarchy and you introduce new leadership positions, the role of agile manager as hands-off management, not being part of the operational day-to-day business of teams, was very instrumental in fostering this culture that we now have.
And maybe in addition to that, it's also hard to build up this kind of bubble within a big organization. So whenever you start this in a department with, in this case, 200 people, it's necessary not to forget that your surrounding might not understand what you are doing. So so we were confronted with people who didn't understand the idea. And if I would do it again, I would start in the beginning with explaining more what's going on and why we are doing this, not only internally, but also at all the interfaces that the department definitely has in such a big organization.
Okay, thank you. How do you align product structure and management structure? Is it OKRs or something else?
That's a good one. We tried OKRs and also many things else. It's very what we experienced in the beginning when we had these shared responsibilities of creating product responsibility in the chief product owner organization, and we had agile management responsibility, that everybody was trying to get into their roles, and we defined more ourselves more about the new focus that we had, and we needed to understand that this only goes jointly, and that we can only achieve things when we work together. And what we did from the start was, in the whole leadership team, we did not have individual goals, but we had shared goals, and everybody was also the performance evaluation for everybody was the same. So we all focused on the same needs. So we couldn't say we built a management frame that because we want to be agile and it does not fit the needs of the product world. It was directly affecting us, and that was very important to have this spirited leadership at the top that Juliane mentioned, who got it all started, that he forced us, not forced us, but he brought us together and created the spirit of creating an organization that delivers great products.
So to make this a little clearer, we had the same goals, means that the product owners had also some kind of people and organizational goals, and the agile managers had or have product goals. That's why everyone was responsible together, and it was not possible to separate the responsibility of the agile managers from the responsibilities of the product owners anymore.
And it's also, we showed that as example one in our presentation, being transparent about these objectives that we had. So we had both on the organizational side, so where do we want to grow, but also on the product side. And
it was also transparent to everyone. It was not no longer the fact that leaders had secrets about their objectives, but really shared them with everyone. So all the people in the departments were able to understand maybe why the leaders act like they act, because there are some goals they have to achieve.
Have you ever had experience? Have you ever experienced a high frequency of people fluctuation? Maybe.
No, not in this regard.
Okay. And just one more question. We have time for that. We passed our time for the session, but it's okay. We will have a bit shorter break after this. How was value communicated to the team? In example, how did you measure the output versus outcome?
Well, when I left Trump, we were still struggling with the differentiation. So when it comes to outcome, it's always more difficult to measure it or to find measurements. But I have to say that we had nice KPIs coming from the software directly. So about data analytics, how people use the software and also how they rate the software. So there were some nice feedbacks that we at least could use, and that we could that the teams especially could use to see if they are successful or not. But basically all the teams had their own KPI set, because it's definitely not helpful to have the same KPI set for everyone, doing different things and are at different states. So maybe Heiko, you want to add something? Or,
It's maybe because when you have team KPIs, like having teams tracking their velocity and how much they achieved within an iteration and release, is very difficult to correlate with business value. So what we are working on is to get an internal measure that we agree with our market people on what business value is, so that we can better see what was the total outcome of what we have delivered in a product in a certain release. And having said that, it's not that easy. Business value is difficult to agree on, and you need to have it does not have to be perfectly close, but you have to, when you want to introduce business value, you need to really weigh each and every flow item. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. And that is something that we are still improving on.
Okay. Sorry, I know that you have some delay, but the guys in the technical need to unmute me, put the other screen, and okay. Sorry for the delay. That would be all of the questions. Really, thank you both. Thank you, Juliane. Thank you, Heiko. It was a lovely session, and I really enjoyed it, and I really like that you joined us here on the Regional Scrum Gathering, and hopefully you will join us again. Hopefully it will be here in Belgrade, or we will come to you and maybe we can meet also in Germany. Thank you both. Thank you both.
Both ways.
Yeah. Thank you, and we will see each other soon, I hope.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Thanks to everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.